Hello all, a very good afternoon. Welcome to our second lecture of the Masterclass 2025 for the upcoming prelims examination. So this is going to be the second lecture on environment and ecology for all those who have actually started now. So I would like to introduce myself as Sureka Bhaskar, and I am dealing with the environment and ecology sessions for your upcoming prelims examination with respect to current affairs. Okay. After that, we'll also be taking up miscellaneous topics like the international organization and other prelims facts like schemes, reports, indices, important places in news, etc. Okay. So we have actually started with this prelims masterclass in order to ease your preparation for the upcoming examination, because current affairs, especially from the environment and ecology point of view, or from this section, actually plays a very important role. And also, this is the particular period where you will actually have to do smart and quick revision of your current affair topics that will give you the edge. Okay. So just to brush up the concepts that we had actually dealt with yesterday, let me actually take through what and all we have discussed yesterday. And also we will actually look at what are all the topics that we will be dealing with today and the classes henceforth. Okay. So if you guys would remember, I actually ran through this particular slide depicting what are all the topics that we'll be dealing in the upcoming classes. So we had started with ecosystems yesterday, if you remember, right? So we had started with ecosystems yesterday, and in the ecosystems, we actually covered the forest ecosystems. And in the forest ecosystems, we actually covered a number of topics like the Peace Forest Initiative, where we discussed about the UNCBD, we discussed about the UNFCCC as well as UNCCD. Okay, and here, just to make a passing reference, yesterday we had discussed that this particular United Nations Convention to combat desertification is the only international binding treaty. Yes, it is the only internationally binding treaty for desertification. Okay, otherwise all the three Rio conventions are legally binding only. Okay, so this is what it is. However, the parties, like for example, you see US, it actually moved out, or it opted out of the Paris agreement, followed by other countries like Argentina, etc. So that is actually the call of the countries to move away from the conference of parties, or the the meetings of particular conventions like the protocols, Kyoto Protocol, Paris Agreement, etc. So we were discussing about the Peace Forest Initiative. So that is what I just wanted to make you guys clear of that concept. Moving on, we actually looked at the other initiatives like the UN Red. Okay. And we also looked at the international arrangement of forest. Then we spoke about the mountain partnership, etc. Okay, so this is what we discussed yesterday under forest. Then we actually moved on to the other ecosystem, that is the ocean. Under the ocean, we actually saw that India is yet to, or it will be soon signing and ratifying the High Seas Treaty. Over there, we had actually discussed what is this particular High Seas Treaty, why is it important, and what is High Seas first of all, and what are the conventions or the frameworks that actually regulate it, like the UNCLOS, etc. Okay. So after that, we moved on to the other ecosystems, where we actually saw the mountain ecosystem, where we discussed about the mountain partnership, and the second one was the peatland. Okay, peatland conservation. So these are the topics that we actually discussed yesterday. And today, what we will be discussing are the remaining ecosystems that are there, and also we will deal with the environmental organization and bodies, both global as well as national. Okay, in the global, we will be discussing about the World Wildlife Fund for Nature, and also the Global Environmental Facility. And also under national, we'll be discussing about the National Green Tribunal, the jurisdiction, the composition, as well as the appointment of the chairperson, which becomes important for your prelims examination, and whether it has the power and the jurisdictions like a civil court or not, we will be discussing over here. And also we will discuss about the Central Groundwater Board, and also IMD. Okay, so all this we'll actually be discussing today. So today, cumulatively, we'll be finishing up with the ecosystems and the environment organizations as well as bodies. After which on Monday, we will actually freshly start with our climate change, where we'll be dealing with all the conferences of parties, that is UNFCCC, UNCBD, and then we will move on to the mitigation adaptation strategies, for which India has actually taken certain guidelines like the greenwashing guidelines, etc. All that we'll be discussing on Monday. So now let us actually kickstart our discussion with today's topics. Okay, so these are the mixture of topics that we will be dealing with today. That is, we will be discussing about the other ecosystems I told you, right? So other ecosystems also includes your cryosphere. Okay, so we'll be discussing about what is cryosphere and so on, because cryosphere has become an has been an important topic. Okay, so that has already come in the recent mains examination. Okay, so it's a PYQ, and also we will be discussing about artificial reefs. So what do you mean by artificial reefs, and what are all the significance of such reefs? What is the need for establishing such reefs? Whether there have been states in India that have actually done this, all this we'll be discussing. Then the other ecosystem is actually your wetland. Sorry, it is your mangroves. Okay, it is your mangroves. We'll be looking into what is mangroves, what are the salient features of mangroves, and how is it ecologically important. Okay, so all the services that is produced by the mangroves, provided by the mangroves, all that we'll be discussing. Moving on, another important ecosystem are the wetland ecosystem. So with respect to wetlands, we'll be discussing what are all the wetlands and how are the wetlands conserved under the Ramsar or protected under the Ramsar Convention on wetlands. All that we will be discussing over here. And with this, we'll also be discussing about the Montreux records and what is the status of India's Ramsar sites, and which is the country which has the largest Ramsar sites all the time. All that we'll be discussing here. Moving forward, we will also be discussing about the coral reefs. So when it comes to coral reefs, we'll be discussing about mass coral bleaching. And what do you mean by mass coral bleaching, and what are all the factors that are associated with this particular bleaching, and how is it associated with the climate change is what we will see here. Moving forward, we will also be discussing about deep sea corals. What do you mean by deep sea corals, and how they are different from that of the surface or the shallow water corals? This is what we'll be discussing, and with this we will be completing our ecosystem portion. Okay, now moving forward, we will discuss about the environmental organizations and bodies. The first one to start with will be WWF. This is nothing but the Wildlife Fund for Nature. So we will discuss about Wildlife Fund for Nature. When was it established, whether it functions in different countries, whether one of the branches are in India or not, what is the significance of the same, all that we'll be discussing here. Then moving forward, we will be talking about the Global Environmental Facility, whether it is actually a funding organization, and what are all the conventions this actually funds, whether you have the the Minamata Convention, you have the Stockholm Convention, okay, on persistent organic pollutants, and then there are others like the UNCBD, the UNFCCC, and so on. All that we'll be discussing here. Moving forward, we will be discussing about the 150th anniversary of the Indian Meteorological Department. And because of this, what is the recent framework on the climate practices or the activities it has actually brought forward? This is what we'll be discussing here. So IMD will be a topic of discussion. Moving forward, the next topic will be our NGT, that is the National Green Tribunal. Okay, so we will be looking at what are all the the rulings that are given by the NGT, what are the jurisdictions, whether whatever the NGT actually says, whether it is binding or not. All that we'll be discussing here. And final topic for the day will be Central Groundwater Board. And Central Groundwater Board recently released the report of 2024 discussing about the groundwater contamination. Okay, so groundwater contamination report of 2024 by the Central Groundwater Board. So we will also be discussing about this particular what is the status of groundwater pollution, and what are all the contaminants over there, and those contaminants cause what kind of diseases we'll be discussing. Okay, so these are all the topics that we will be discussing. Let us quickly start with our discussion. So the first topic for the day will be cryosphere. So there is the state of cryosphere report that was actually recently released by the International Cryosphere Climate Initiative, ICCI. Okay, so don't worry, the cryosphere report, the name itself actually has cryosphere in it. So who releases it? International Cryosphere Climate Initiative. So this is nothing but, it talks about the global cryosphere. First of all, what do you mean by cryosphere? This is nothing but, it is the water on Earth's surface, or water on the surface of the Earth that is frozen. So the surface of the Earth, which is covered by this frozen water in the form of ice sheets, in the form of ice caps, in the form of frozen rivers or frozen lakes, or be it glaciers, icebergs, all these are called as the cryosphere. Okay, and what is the impact of climate change on this cryosphere is what we will discuss. And this particular report has actually warned, stating that the global cryosphere is rapidly declining due to the effects of global warming, that is increase in the temperature. So that actually results in the melting of the ice. Okay, so when there's melting of the ice, there will be sea level rise, there will be submergence of the coastal areas, and then there will be loss of life, livelihood. So this is going to have a lot of social and economic impact as well. Okay, so this is what this particular report has stated. Let us quickly see, what do you mean by cryosphere? The earth's On the earth's surface where the water exists in its frozen form. So portions of the earth's surface where the water is in the frozen form is called as cryosphere, originated from the Greek word that is cryos, meaning cold or frost. And if you see the earth's cryosphere, it can be seen in these forms, that is ice and snow on land and ice in water, which includes frozen part of the ocean, the frozen rivers, the frozen lakes and sea ice, ice shelves, icebergs, etc. And here on land, here permafrost is also very important. The glaciers, the ice caps, all these are important. What is permafrost? Permafrost is the portion of the land, or you can say the topsoil, which is permanently frozen for about 2 years. So this is called as permafrost, and it also has a significance in, a significant role with the climate change, because it stores enough amount of carbon as well as other gases. And if it thaws, or if it actually melts, what happens? There will be release of these gases into the atmosphere, thereby increasing the temperature. So if you see the cryosphere here, you can see sea ice, snow, atmosphere, glaciers, frozen river, frozen ground, as well as frozen ocean. So this is what our cryosphere is all about. Now let's move forward and see, I told you, right, the ice cap, the snow, the glacier, the lake, as well as the river ice, the sea ice, the iceberg, the ice shelf is over here, the ice sheet is over here, as well as the snow, which is over here. All these actually form a part of what? The cryosphere. It also includes the permafrost. Okay, so this is a depiction of what is our cryosphere. Now moving forward, let us see what is the significance of cryosphere. Cryosphere plays a very important role in regulation of climate. How? There is something called as albedo. What do you mean by albedo? Albedo is nothing but the reflection. Okay, so what do you mean by albedo? If this is the surface of cryosphere, that is the ice, the incident or the incoming solar radiation, which is called as insolation, to what extent or how much of it is actually reflected back, and what is the capacity of this surface to reflect it back, is called as albedo. Okay, so in climate regulation, cryosphere plays a very important role in the form of albedo. Okay, this is what is the reflecting capacity of the incoming solar radiation. Here, if there is high albedo, okay, high albedo means high amount of reflection from the surface, what happens? There will not be much of energy which is actually absorbed. Okay, so thereby the temperature is regulated and there is no higher temperature also. So when there is high albedo, it prevents the absorption of solar energy and helps in maintaining the cooler global temperature. And also cryosphere plays an important role as a source of fresh water, because 69% of the world's fresh water is in the form of cryosphere only, is in the cryosphere in the form of ice sheets, then glaciers, etc. and it is primarily stored in glaciers. That's what I told you. And also it actually maintains the global water availability and provides fresh water for all different purposes, like take it agriculture, take it industries, and all other human activities. Okay, so this is what it is. Now moving forward, this is actually your albedo. So see how the albedo actually works. This is how your albedo works. Okay, so this is your incoming solar radiation. So let me do it. Yeah, this is your incoming solar radiation, and from the surface of the earth it gets reflected back, and you can actually see the frozen portion of the earth. Okay, so this is your albedo. Let me play that again for you. If you see here, this is how the reflection actually takes place, and this is actually called as your albedo. This is how the incoming solar radiation is reflected back from the surface of the earth. So this is how the temperature is being regulated by the presence of cryosphere, and that is how they play an important role. Now let us actually move forward to see the significance. We'll continue. So apart from the climate regulation, apart from providing sufficient water, etc., it also helps in carbon storage, where I told you, right, the permafrost itself, that is the upper layer of the soil which actually remains frozen for more than 2 years, is called as permafrost, and that actually has the capacity to store twice as more as carbon than which is present in the atmosphere. So twice the carbon is actually stored over here, so which accounts to around 1400 to 1600 billion tons. Also, the cryosphere hosts diverse ecosystems. Okay, there are a number of flora as well as fauna which are actually present over here, and all this will help us, that is cryosphere will actually help us in achieving the sustainable development goals also nationally and internationally, that is achieving SDG 3, which is nothing but climate action, which is a critical indicator, okay, and the driver of climate change. That is what cryosphere is a critical driver. Also its impact in the form of fresh water affects SDG 6, that is clean water and sanitation, and finally the biodiversity, that is SDG 15. Now when it comes to sustainable development goals, okay, so earlier there was a concept of millennium development goals. After that only we actually had the origin of sustainable development goals. Okay, so now I will actually, it is just what to say, I'm just going off track from what we are actually dealing with. I want to teach you how to quickly remember the sustainable development goals, because it is very, very important for our examination. Whether you write economy answer, whether you write a polity answer, or where you're writing about the international relations or the environment, ecology, science and tech, everything you have to mention about this particular SDG. Okay, so there is a quick way actually to remember the sustainable development goals. First one, let us see. Here I'll put number 1, that means it's SDG goal number 1. Okay. So, no hunger. Okay. Number 2, no poverty. Okay. So, here you are actually, 1 minute. Let me just check the comment sections. Just give me a minute. Okay. So, let us actually start. I think the live is going on, and okay. So, we were discussing about the sustainable development goals. The first one is no, sorry, I'm sorry. The first one is no poverty. Okay, so no poverty. That is, you are not poor anymore. Just remember, like a story. When you are not poor, what happens? That implies that you are not hungry. Hunger means not the regular hunger, like munching snacks or something, like basic food that you'll have to eat, okay, like thrice a day, the basic meal I'm talking about. So, when there is no poverty, you're not hungry anymore. So, when there is no hunger, you actually have what? Good health. Good health and well-being. Okay, So when all these are satiated, that is when all these are satisfied, when you're not poor, when you're not hunger, when your body is in good shape, then what you will actually focus on? Please just tell me. We will focus on quality education. So that this is SDG 4. Okay. So when quality education is there, what happens as a woman or as a girl if you go to school? Then there is gender equality. So at school there is gender equality. Okay. So when there is gender equality, what happens? Your school is actually good. So I'm just telling a story, okay? So you don't have poverty, hunger, your health is good, you've gone to school and then you have actually established gender equality. After that, what do you learn at school? It is about the clean water and sanitation, okay? You learn about clean water and sanitation and also about clean and affordable energy. Okay, clean and affordable energy. So these are the lessons you learn from your school. So your 7 goals are actually done. What are the 10 more goals? We will see. So when there is clean and affordable energy, till here your schooling and everything is over. Okay, so after your schooling, your education, you've learned about clean energy, you learned about clean water, sanitation. Now you're moving out to get a job. Okay, so you're moving for work. Okay, so something with respect to job and work is your SDG 8. Okay, so next, after your work, in case if you're working in an industry, in industry you work towards innovation and infrastructure. So this is your SDG 10. So sorry, SDG 9. So what is your SDG 10? So as is anyone commenting in the comment section? Let us actually see. Yeah, so far no, we will actually see. Okay, so this is what, till here you have actually finished your industry and there is innovation and infrastructure. So after your after your infrastructure, when you have gone to the job, then what happens? There will be reduced inequality. Okay, so there is reduced inequality. Okay, so now you have attained till this. First there was no poverty, no hunger. You go to school, learn about your gender equality, then clean water as well as clean and affordable energy. Then you actually go to a workplace where what is your workplace? That is what? You're decent to work. Okay, so decent to work is what is SDG number 8. So this is decent to work. After decent work, if it is in industry, you focus on innovation and infrastructure. And finally, the 10th one is reduced inequality. Okay, so after all this, now you move to a city. Okay, so you move to sustainable city and communities. So when it is going to be sustainable? Only if you know to do a balanced or sustainable consumption and production. So this is your SDG 12. Okay, and per se your SDG 13 will be climate action with respect to climate, and SDG 14 is life under water, and SDG 15 is life on land. SDG 16, all these 15 goals are possible only when you have a peaceful, a justice and strong institution. Okay, so peaceful, justice and strong institutions should be there. And finally, the 17th one is partnership goals. So these are your 17 SDGs. Why I had to teach you is that sometimes we find it difficult, because in the previous slide we said that the cryosphere helps us in achieving the SDG of 15. So immediately you should know 15, life on land. Then SDG 6, immediately you have to know it is clean water and sanitation. Okay, so all these are very important for you guys to remember. So let us actually move forward. These are the list of your sustainable development goals. poverty, hunger, decent work, industry, then reduced inequality, sustainable city, community, energy, everything is actually included in your sustainable development goals. Now, continuing with the topic of cryosphere. Cryosphere, I actually told you, right? So what is the reflecting capacity? It plays a very, very important role in reflecting back, okay, the insolent, I mean the incoming solar radiation. So here, if you see, what is the reflection or the albedo, percentage of reflectivity of water? Let us see. It is somewhere between 0 to 5. If you see a forest, here also it is somewhere between 0 to 15, let's say. And the sand, for sand, if you see, it is somewhere between 20 and 40, and the earth's average is somewhere between 25 and 40. Okay, so this is the reflective percentage. Whereas if you see the percentage of reflectivity of the cryosphere, whether it is old snow, whether it is new snow, whether it is ice and cloud, we can see here old snow or the ice, it is somewhere between 60 to 80. So look at the amount of reflection that it can send back, so that the temperature is regulated, the temperature is colder. Next one, the cloud is around 80 to 100, and then the fresh snow is around almost 90 to 95% of reflectivity. Okay, so this is what is the order or the albedo on the, for earth surfaces. Now moving forward, let us see, there are few initiatives, because whatever topic you talk about, whether it is mangroves, whether it is global warming, whether it is cryosphere, there will be number of initiatives which are taken by the countries globally as well as national conventions. Okay, so if you see the global initiatives, the first one is International Cryosphere Climate Initiative, that is the ICCI. Okay, so this is nothing but established or brought into force in 2009 following the COP15 in Copenhagen. Okay, so again COP15, you need to know about it. Okay, next one, it consists of senior policy experts, the researchers, etc., who are working with the government. It aims to preserve as much as the Earth's cryosphere as possible. Next one is Global Cryosphere Watch. So it is a joint initiative by WMO with other agencies, and it aims to establish or enhance the systemic observation and monitoring of the cryosphere. Okay, providing, it actually provides the essential data of the cryosphere in order to monitor how is the status of cryosphere, whether it is deteriorating because of global warming or not. So that is the Global Cryosphere Watch. If you see the United Nations General Assembly, this is very important. Okay, which is the decade of millets? You had a question on millets recently because it was considered as the year of International Year of Millets. You will have question on International Year of Desertification. Once it was the International Year for Soils. So there under biogeography there was a question on soils. So here the UNGA has approved this particular decade, that is 2025 to 2034, as the decade of action for cryosphere sciences. Okay, so that is why you might get a question. Okay, possibly. Next one, we have the Arctic Council. Okay, so this is a high level intergovernmental body, and this actually came into force way back in 1996, and India's interest was even before that. Okay, so you need to know all that historical underpinning of this, and this actually came into existence by the Ottawa Declaration. Very, very important. And this is to promote the cooperation and coordination among the Arctic nations, and also to protect the Arctic ecosystem and the environment. It also, apart from protecting the environment, it plays an important role in protecting the economies as well as the social and cultural well-being of the indigenous people who live here. So these are the global initiatives. Now let's move forward to see India's initiatives in order to protect the cryosphere. So it is National Mission for Sustaining the Himalayan Ecosystem, where you actually have the glaciers. Okay, so this is very, very important. And what is this National Mission for Sustaining the Himalayan Ecosystem? This is one of the 8 missions under NAPCC. We discussed about this, right? I hope you remember the National Action Plan on Climate Change. This is what is NAPCC. So this was formulated by the government in 2008 in order to deal with the menace of climate change. And so it has, or it established 8 missions under that, and one such mission is National Mission for Sustaining the Himalayan Ecosystem. Apart from that, there is this National Solar Mission, we have the National Water Mission, and then we have National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture, then National Mission for Sustainable Himalayan Ecosystem. We have National Green Forest Mission or Green India Mission, okay, and then we also have National Mission on Electric Mobility, okay, and then National Mission on Enhanced Energy Efficiency, okay. So, sustainable agriculture, sustainable, and one on National Mission on Sustainable Habitat. So, these are all the 8 missions under this particular NAPCC, that is National Action Plan on Climate Change, which was brought in 2008, okay. So, this is the initiative, and here ends the topic of cryosphere, okay. So, here there is one more called as the PACER scheme, okay. So, PACER scheme actually is an umbrella term which actually has 4 components, that is the Arctic region, the Antarctic, it has the southern as well as the cryosphere and climate program. It has 4 components. So, PACER actually stands for polar science. We are dealing with all these scientific discoveries in the polar region, right? That is cryosphere, polar science and cryosphere research. And it has 4 elements, that is the Antarctic, the Indian Arctic program, the Southern Ocean, the cryosphere, and the climate program. And here it has actually implemented successfully again through the National Center for Polar and Ocean Research. This is nothing but it is an autonomous institute under the Ministry of Earth Sciences, okay. So, these are the initiatives. So, we have actually completed a very, very important topic, that is the cryosphere, okay. So, any doubts so far? Let us actually take a minute to see if there are any doubts that are raised. Okay, so far we do not have anybody having any doubts. So, fine. Now, let us actually move forward and see the second topic, that is artificial reefs, okay. So, what do you mean by artificial reefs? The name itself suggests that it is artificial. It is actually not a natural ecosystem, okay. So, this is something that is man-made or it is human-made. Let us see. There have been 300 artificial reefs that have been introduced, that is deployed off the coast of Rameshwaram. See, Rameshwaram is actually there in the news, right? The Rameshwaram Island or the Pamban Island. So, recently we had the bridge also actually operating over there, the rail bridge. All that is very important. Please do follow the current affairs, not only of this particular subject, but for others, where it is located, what is the significance, what is the demography of this region. And earlier or during the Britishers was the bridge actually inaugurated, okay. And then how it was actually used for trade between India and Sri Lanka. All that was discussed in one of your DNA videos, okay. Okay, fine, let's not go off track. So, off the coast of this Rameshwaram in Tamil Nadu, in order to enhance, what happened? Artificial reefs were introduced, okay, in order to enhance the marine environment and to boost the sustainable fisheries, okay. So, let us actually see what are artificial reefs. Can you see what is an artificial reef? So, there are sometimes the geotextile materials or concretes or cinders, all these are actually used in order to create a reef-like environment, okay. And after that is created, that is actually dropped into the ocean. So, when like something like this is developed and then it is actually dropped into the ocean. After that, what happens? There will be algae. It will be encrusted with algae and other small living organisms, and eventually what happens? It will be covered, or it will be inhabited by a number of organisms, and hence it actually becomes a kind of an coral ecosystem, okay. So, this will mimic the original coral reefs, okay. So, this is what this has been done in the Rameshwaram coast. So, if you see this once again, you can actually see the GIF, okay. So, let us stop this and see this again. So, this is how it is introduced, and slowly it will be inhabited by the marine organisms, okay. Now, let us actually move forward and understand what are artificial reefs. Can you see? This is an artificial reef, okay. So, these are man-made structures which are placed on the sea floor or the ocean floor in order to mimic your natural coral reef. Okay, how the construction is made? By using the materials like rocks, by using cinder blocks, this is burnt wood and coal, etc., and old tires. What is the function? This actually provides a hard substrate for the marine organisms to colonize. So see here, you can see small fish actually inhabiting this region, right? So here you actually have the marine organisms that actually colonize, and over time it is encrusted with algae, corals, and then other organisms, so that it finally becomes a complex habitat for supporting diverse marine ecosystem. Okay, so this is what are the artificial reefs. Now move forward. The implementation and support for this is actually provided by the Fisheries Survey of India along with ICAR, Central Marine Fisheries Research Institute. Okay, so ICAR, CMFRI. These both institutions actually provide the technical support, and under the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana, very important. So under this, the Department of Fisheries also promotes these projects for enhancing or sustainable coastal fishing. Okay, so this is what is the program all about. Okay, now let us see, in India, have there been any other states where such artificial reefs were introduced? Yes, one is in Kovalam. Okay, Kovalam artificial reef, which is in Kerala. And if you see the details of this, this was actually constructed using the geotextile bags which were just filled with sand. And what were the objective, or what was the result it brought? It enhanced the marine biodiversity. It also provided support for the fisheries, and it promoted tourism. So people will actually come, go do scuba diving and see all these coral reefs, all that is there. The next one is Vishakhapatnam artificial reef in Andhra Pradesh, and the objective was to mitigate the coastal erosion. You can ask me how these artificial reefs mitigate coastal erosion. This is because they absorb some wave energy. Okay, so the heights of the waves and the energy with which they hit the shore and they erode is actually reduced by these particular artificial reefs. Okay, and also to enhance the fish habitats. The details is it was actually introduced to protect the coastline from erosion and improve the fish stocks. So here we are actually done with the second topic, that is artificial reefs. Next one, very important topics, red list of mangrove ecosystem. We know that IUCN red list actually has only what? Only the species, okay? But it also releases the mangrove ecosystem. So the IUCN red list of mangrove ecosystem has actually highlighted the dire situation or the consequences of the mangrove forests worldwide. It has actually said that 50% of the mangroves are affected, or they are vulnerable because of the human activities and climate change. And this particular red list actually serves as a benchmark in order to track the progress that our country has actually made with respect to the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. This is only the 30-30 rule, right? That is, restore 30% of the degraded coastland by 2030. Okay, so this is what it is. Now let's move forward and see what is a mangrove forest. Can you see mangrove forest? These are actually trees, and these can also be shrubs, which are mainly found in the coastal intertidal zone. What do you mean by intertidal? It can also be called as littoral. Okay, that is nothing but between the high tides as well as low tides. Okay, so during the high tides, all this portion is actually submerged under water, and when there is low tide, this is actually open to the surface, and it needs a certain kind of temperature, and it cannot withstand the freezing temperature. Okay, let us see. So these live in the coastal intertidal zone, and it cannot withstand the freezing temperature. It covers an area of approximately 150,000 square kilometers, and it is specially found in the tropical, the subtropical and temperate coasts along the world. And around 15% of the world's coastlines actually have the presence of mangroves. Okay, so these are the mangroves. Now, moving forward, let us see what has the IUCN study actually said. The assessment was carried out around in 36 regions across 44 countries, and they all that cumulatively said that 50% of this particular mangrove ecosystem are vulnerable. They are endangered, they are critically endangered, and they are in the risk of collapse by the year 2050. That is another 2.5 decades, it's all going to collapse. And also, climate change is threatening 33% of the mangrove ecosystem. And the mangroves, which are specifically found in South India, Sri Lanka and the Maldives as well as the Northwest Atlantic, are critically endangered. So basically they are saying that they are on the threat because of climate change, and they are going to be depleted by the year 2050. So this is what the assessment actually said. If you see, this is the global red list of the mangrove ecosystem. So if you see, the red areas are critically endangered. If you see Sri Lanka and if you see this region of southern India, all these are, and the Lakshadweep as well as the Andaman region, the mangroves are almost critically endangered. Then if you see this particular vulnerable regions, you actually have the Central America, the Southern America, then you have the west coast of Africa. All these regions are vulnerable, and also these green regions are least concerned. They are comparatively safe, but however they are under threat. That is towards the east coast of Africa. Then you can see Southeast Asia, the northern part of Australia. So this is what is the global red list of the mangrove ecosystems actually say. Now let's move forward and understand about the mangroves. I told you, right, these are extraordinary tropical forests predominantly. However, they are found in the subtropical as well as certain temperate regions, okay, and they are at the edge of the land and the sea, okay, which are increasingly being threatened, and 30 to 50% have been lost. Why? Because of shrimp farming, tourism, and intrusive coastal developments where there is development of infrastructure, all these things and other factors. And mangroves are home to many endangered species also. So here are certain benefits of the mangroves, that is they prevent erosion, right? How do they prevent erosion? Because they control the wave action, and also they control the incidence of water into the areas, okay, coastal areas. So they prevent the erosion and stabilize the shoreline. Also they reduce the wave height up to 66% during the storms. That is why even during the 2004 tsunami, the areas which had mangroves were comparatively less affected. Next one, they improve the water quality. Of course the runoff and all will actually be less, so the groundwater pollution will be less. Next one, they provide habitat to 80% of the fish species, which can also be used for commercial purposes and the aesthetic value. Also, they provide privacy and shade for the property owners, not that important, okay. And what are the threats they face? Increased deforestation, the pollution as well as climate change. So these are all the threats that the mangrove actually face, okay. Now let us actually see an interesting video. So if you see, these are the areas with mangroves and these are the areas without the mangroves, okay. Just a minute. Let me see if it's playing. This, I'm not able to play this one, just a minute. Yeah, let's continue with our mangroves. We wanted to play this video for you, but very unfortunately, we are not able to. I mean, the screen is not supporting it. Anyways, this is the portion of the land or the ecosystem where we actually can. 1 minute. Well, let me just on and yes. So this is the portion where there are mangroves, okay, and this is the portion which actually are not protected by the mangroves. And when the tsunami or the waves of great height actually hit the shore, what happens? The mangroves actually absorbs most of the wave energy and it does not get transmitted here. So life and habitation are not affected over here, whereas over here there is large scale damage of life and property. Okay, so this is what it is. In the next class, I'll probably bring up the videos for you guys. Okay, so now let's move to our fourth topic, new Ramsar sites. Let's see the comment section. Kindly provide the environment and ecology current affairs only from the Hindu and Indian Express. See, only from the Hindu and Indian Express. Actually, UPSC does not follow that pattern anymore. UPSC follows a number of websites. For example, if you see in the recent past, there were questions on what you say, on something on cyber security or some drug trafficking. Yes, the menace of drug trafficking. It was asked from ORF. Okay, and also the groundwater contamination. It was asked from Down to Earth. So these kind of magazines also become very, very important. So sometimes we tend to ignore that, right? So this one, of course, mangroves are from the Hindu as well as the Indian Express, but if it is from other magazine also, we've integrated it. Okay, so that is what it is. So I think we've actually answered the question that was over here. Now let us actually continue. Next one, new Ramsar sites added. So recently there were two bird sanctuaries from India, that is specifically from the state of Bihar, that is Nagi as well as Nakti, which were added to the Ramsar sites, making the tally to 82. Okay, so when this was added, it was actually 82, but currently the number of Ramsar sites in India as of 2025 stand 89. Okay, so it is important for you to know what are all the Ramsar sites that were recently added. Now moving forward, let us actually understand the new sites, whether they are what to say naturally formed or whether they are man-made. That is also important because one of your PYQs actually had about the Kodaikanal lake, whether it was a natural or it was a man-made lake. Okay, so these kind of Ramsar sites or the wetlands which are specifically protected under the Ramsar Convention, you definitely have to know whether it is natural, whether it is brackish, it is salt water, what is the kind of soil it actually has, what is the kind of flora, fauna, all that you need to know. Okay, so these new sites are both man-made. Okay, they are man-made reservoirs and these are actually situated in the Jhajha forest range of the Jamui district, which is located in the state of Bihar. And what is the flora over here? It is the dry deciduous forest, and with these two sites, India actually tallied with respect to that of China. But however, as of 2025, we have surpassed China. Okay, so China currently actually has 82 Ramsar sites, whereas India has 89. Okay, and the country with the highest number of Ramsar sites stands to be the United Kingdom with 175, followed by Mexico, that is 144. Okay, so now moving forward, let's actually see about the Ramsar Convention. So what do you mean by Ramsar Convention? So Ramsar Convention is also called as the Convention on Wetlands of International Importance. So wetland is an ecosystem, right? It is very marshy, etc. We'll be looking at that also. So whichever convention is protecting these wetlands are called as the Ramsar Convention. This is nothing but it is an intergovernmental body and this provides framework for conservation as well as wise utilization of wetlands as well as what are all the resources that come out of it. This was actually signed in the year 1971 in Ramsar, Iran. Very important. Don't think Iran is actually a dry place. So this was it was actually in Iran. Don't think it is a dry place, so wetland has no association with it. But it was signed in the year 1971 in Ramsar and came into effect in 1975. It has a total membership of 172 countries, okay, and which are all contracting parties to the Convention. Is India a part of it or not? You definitely have to mention in the comment section. Very, very important. So, the contracting parties to this particular convention have to give their commitment. What are all the commitments? To use the wetlands wisely, and in order to designate suitable wetlands as wetlands of international importance, that is the Ramsar list. So whatever are the wetlands of international importance, they are placed over here. The first Ramsar site from India to actually be placed in the first wetland that was actually placed under the Ramsar list was the Chilka Lake. The Chilka Lake. Where is it present? Mention in the comment section. So, and managing them effectively, and also they have to cooperate internationally on shared wetland, systems, the species as well as the transboundary wetlands. Okay. So, this is about the Ramsar Convention. Further, the Ramsar Convention was actually modified by two agreements or protocols. The first one is your Paris Protocol of 1982. Okay. So, in 1982, they actually said that they brought this Paris Protocol. They said that now it is no longer required that only countries should be parties. Even the regional, party, or you can say the regional economic integration organization. For example, the European Union can also be a contracting party. And the next agreement was the Regina Agreement of 1987, which actually brought provisions to amend the convention itself. Okay, amend the convention itself, and it enabled holding regular meetings of the contracting parties. So what is the meaning of amending the convention? In order to add new Ramsar sites, it had to be amended, right? So that is what is the Regina Amendment. So sometimes if they ask the Paris Protocol or the Regina Amendment is associated with what, you need to know it is with respect to the Ramsar Convention. Okay. Now, moving forward, let us see the Ramsar sites in India. So, this is actually the map depicting the Ramsar sites in India. So, the facts, there are total 82, no, it is 89 as of today. 89 Ramsar sites in India. The first one, Chilka Lake of Odisha, was the first one to make it to the list, and the Keoladio National Park, which is actually located in the state of Rajasthan. These were the first Ramsar sites that were recognized in 1981, that is 10 years after this agreement came into existence. Next, you have to know the largest. Which is the largest Ramsar site or the wetland? That is the Sundarbans, okay? And the smallest is the Renuka wetland, which is located in Himachal Pradesh. And which is the state which has the highest number of Ramsar sites? It is Tamil Nadu, okay? And also, India had actually come up with the Wetland Conservation Management Rules of 2017. Over there, they had mentioned what can be classified as wetlands and what cannot be. They actually said that the definition of wetland does not include the river channel. It does not include paddy fields or any other areas that are used for commercial purposes. So, these exemptions also you need to know when you're talking about the Ramsar sites and wetlands. So, this is actually a map, very important. In the state of Tamil Nadu, you have a number of wetlands as well as the bird sanctuaries, and then same thing is actually given for Kerala, Karnataka, Goa, Maharashtra, and for other states. Okay, very, very important map, and you need to know this. Okay. Now, let's move forward in seeing the categories of Ramsar wetlands. So, what are all the areas that are classified? We had the Wetland Conservation Rule of 2017. Similarly, internationally, what classifies or qualifies to be a wetland or a Ramsar site is what we will see. The Ramsar Convention actually acknowledges a variety of wetlands, okay, whether they are natural, whether they are human-made habitat types, okay, and it acknowledges whether it is a river or even a coral reef can be classified as the wetland. This can also include the swamps, marshes, billabongs, and then you actually had lakes, salt marshes, mud flats, mangroves. All these can also be coral reefs. We spoke about the bogs, the fens yesterday, right? The peatlands, that can also be included over here. And also, with respect to the water that is actually present in these areas, it can be classified whether the water is static or it is actually moving, whether it is fresh water or it is brackish, okay, whether it is saline, whether it is permanent, whether it is temporary, irrespective of all that, it can be categorized as wetlands. It can also include the inland rivers. So nowhere again the river channels or the paddy fields are mentioned, okay. So the river inlands, the coastal or marine water which are actually up to a depth of 6 meters at low tide can also be classified as wetland, okay. And the wetlands can also be underground. So all these can be classified as wetlands. However, we know only 5 major categories of wetlands. Let us actually see what are they. The first one is marine wetlands. So this actually includes the lagoons. It can include the rocky shores, okay, the seagrass beds and coral reefs. So these are marine wetlands. Next one is estuarine wetlands, okay. So this actually includes the tidal marshes. It can actually include the mud flats, etc. So this is called as the estuarine wetlands. And where does the mangroves actually come? It comes under estuarine wetland. The next one is called lacustrine. How to remember lacustrine? Those which are associated with the lakes are called as the lacustrine wetlands. Next one is riverine wetland. Wetlands which are actually along the rivers and the streams are called as the riverine. Next, the final one is the palestrine wetlands, okay, whichever is actually very marshy, whichever is associated with the swamps and the bogs, these are called as palestrine. So marine, estuarine, lacustrine, riverine as well as the palestrine are the different types of wetlands that are actually recognized, okay. So here we've actually completed the wetlands, and now we will actually know the register that consists of these Ramsar list. Whichever places are in the Ramsar list that are facing significant vulnerability or threat because of human activities or any kind of endangerment are kept under the Montreux record, and this is also a part of the Ramsar list. In India, are there any regions? Yes, of course. We have the Loktak Lake in Manipur, and also we have the Keoladeo National Park in Rajasthan. These are listed under the Montreux record. However, if we see Chilika Lake, the first Ramsar site in India, which was kept, which was actually recognized as Ramsar site in 1982, what happened? This was placed in the year 1993, but due to the restoration efforts, it was actually removed in 2002. Okay, so this is what you need to know about the wetlands, okay, or the Ramsar sites or the Ramsar Convention. Now, very important topic. We will see if there are any questions that are being asked. Okay. Chalo, let's actually start with this mass coral bleaching. Okay. So, coral bleaching is very important. Let me actually give you a fair idea about what are corals, what are coral reefs, how they are formed, and because of what reasons this entire coral bleaching takes place. And once we are familiar with all that, we can quickly go through what is actually given over here with a few more added points like the global conventions, the national efforts, etc. Okay. So, this is coral bleaching. First of all, what are corals? So what are corals is what we have to know. How are corals formed is what we have to know. So the corals are marine ecosystems. These are marine ecosystems, and they are formed by tiny living organisms that are called as the coral polyps. Okay, so these tiny marine organisms, they actually secrete an exoskeleton, a hard structure which is made up of calcium carbonate, that is CaCO3. Okay, so this actually builds up over millions of years and results in the formation of corals. Okay, what gives color to the corals? The corals actually exist in symbiotic relationship. What do you mean by symbiosis? I give you a help and in return you give me a favor. So corals also live in a symbiotic relationship with an algae which is called as zooxanthellae. Okay, zooxanthellae. So the zooxanthellae is an algae which gives color to the coral and also gives food to the coral through the process of photosynthesis. and in return the coral actually gives what? Shelter to this particular algae. And if there are any kind, see, there are always certain conditions which are conducive for the corals to survive. The temperature has to be to an extent, the salinity of water has to be to an extent. Okay, if there are any changes in the temperature, then what happens? When there is change in the water temperature, what happens? These corals will be under extreme stress. Okay, and what will they do? They will expel the zooxanthellae algae which are living in their tissues. That is why the bleaching actually happens. That is, these corals will lose their color and they will actually become white in appearance. So bleached corals does not mean that they are dead corals. Okay, they are on the verge of dying. That is what it means. Okay, now the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, that is NOAA, it has actually said that the world is on the verge of experiencing the fourth mass coral bleaching event. So far there have been 3. So now the world is on the verge of experiencing the fourth one, is what NOAA has told. So look at how beautiful this coral ecosystems are. So they definitely need enough amount of sunlight over here. Okay, the photic zone. Then that is when you will actually have the zooxanthellae and the coral surviving over here. So the corals are underwater ecosystems which are characterized by the reef building corals. Okay, that's what I told you. Building of the coral reefs, how do they form? Because of the coral polyps which actually secrete an exoskeleton which is made up of calcium carbonate that build up over millions of years to form the coral reefs. What is the significance of it? Because it hosts the most diverse ecosystem on the earth, and 25% of all the known marine species are actually here. Okay, and that is why it is called as the rainforest of the seas. Oh, so this is what is about the coral reef. Let us actually move forward and see what are the different types of coral reefs. There are the 3 different types of coral reefs. One is actually your fringing reef, next will be your barrier reef, and the final one will be your atolls. Let us see the characteristics as well as examples. Very, very important again. Okay, so what do you mean by fringing reefs? These reefs are very, very close to the land. Okay, so this is the shore. So if you see, this is actually the shore. Immediately you will actually have the reefs immediately starting without a lagoon which is actually in between. So these are closest to the land and they grow directly from the shoreline. Okay, so they generally have a very, very narrow lagoon only, or they are directly attached to the shore, and this is the fringing reef is the most common type of reef which are actually found globally in the Red Sea coast, the coast of East Africa and Caribbean. With respect to India, you can see they are found in Andaman and Nicobar, the Gulf of Mannar, Gulf of Kutch, as well as the Park Strait. All these locations you must be able to locate on the map. Okay. Now moving forward, what do you mean by barrier reefs? These are parallel to the coast and they actually have a deeper lagoon in between. So they are parallel to the coast and they are separated by a deeper, wider lagoon. These are larger and further offshore. Okay, so they are not closer to the shore, they are offshore when compared to that of the fringing reefs, and they often have channels and the gaps allowing water to actually exchange. This is what is your barrier reef. And what are the examples of Great Barrier Reef? You have the Great Barrier Reef of Australia, you have the Belize Barrier Reef. This is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site in, this is somewhere in Central America. Okay, and then also you have the Caribbean and the New Caledonian barrier reef. These are examples of the barrier reef. So far we've actually looked into 2 types of reefs. One is fringing, which are closer or immediately starts from the shore. The next one is the barrier reef, which actually has a deep and a deeper as well as a larger lagoon which is actually separating. It is more offshore is what it says, and the examples we actually saw. Now moving forward, let us see what do you mean by atoll reefs. Atoll reefs are ring-shaped structures. Okay, these mostly surround a submerged land. So atolls are ring-shaped reefs surrounding a central lagoon, if you see in the picture, and this is formed around sunken islands, and these are majorly found in the deep oceanic waters. Examples are atolls of Maldives. Okay, Then Bikini Atoll of the Marshall Islands, and it is also found in the Lakshadweep atolls and the Caroline Islands in the Pacific. So these are examples of different types of reefs, a better picture for you to understand. Okay, so if I have to zoom it for you guys, yeah, so you can see the fringing reef, very close. Okay, so this is very close to the shore, and this is the coral development. This is fringing reef. And barrier reef, if you see, there is actually a lagoon over here. See over here, here is the shore, so it actually has a lagoon. And then you have an atoll, which is generally around a submerged island. Okay, so this is what is called as the atoll reef. Okay, now let's move forward and see what are the ideal situations for corals to actually thrive. So conditions required for coral to thrive is that it needs a photic zone, that is it needs sufficient amount of sunlight. Okay, and sunlight actually have to reach them, so they are mostly present in the shallow water. So this is what it is. However, it is different from another kind of corals called as the deep sea corals. We look at that also. Next one is clear water. Okay, so the water has to be clear enough that there has to be no turbidity, that the sunlight should directly reach the coral. So clear water is the second one. Next one, it needs warm temperature. The temperature where the corals thrive should range between 20 to 32 degree Celsius. So this is what is important. Next again is salt water. Looking at the salinity, it actually has to be between 27 and 40 parts per thousand. Okay, so this is what it is. And if you see the threat that the corals face, if the water is turbid, if it actually has polluted water or filled with sediments, then it cannot survive. So these are the different conditions where the corals will actually thrive. Now, what is coral bleaching? Can you see these two images? This is actually the same coral where the zooxanthellae was active, and this is the bleached coral where it actually looks completely bleached and white, isn't it? Where the coral tissues have totally expelled the zooxanthellae outside. Okay, so coral bleaching is corals actually lose their vibrant colors, okay, and turn white. This means they are not dead, but they are at a higher risk of dying. Why? What is the reason for it? It is of course the changes in the water conditions, particularly when the temperature of the water increases. Okay, so now let us quickly see how the coral bleaching. This was again a very beautiful video that I had taken for you guys, but very unfortunately it's not playing over here. So we will actually see in the next session whether I could be able to play a good video for you on showing how tsunami enters and how mangroves actually help in stopping or curbing the effects of the tsunami. Next on coral bleaching. Now moving forward, we will see how coral bleaching happens. We saw, right? Of course, there is increased temperature stress which will expel the zooxanthellae. Apart from this, there are also other factors, that is due to pollution that actually takes place, then overexposure to sunlight, as well as extreme low tides. Okay, so all these, because it will totally expose it, right? So it will not be further under shallow water. So this is what it is. And also the events of mass coral bleaching will also cause the adjacent corals also to die. Okay, what will be the consequences of this? There will be bleached corals which are deprived of their primary food source, and they will be further susceptible to disease and starvation. Eventually that results in the death of coral. So this is what is called coral bleaching. Okay, next one, what are the initiatives towards this coral reef conservation? We have again global initiatives as well as the national initiatives. So first one is ICRI, which is the International Coral Reef Initiative. So this is a worldwide partnership where the countries actually come together, initiated in 1994. Okay, so ICRI, International Coral Reef Initiative. This actually consists of 101 members, both the government as well as the other stakeholders. This aims at preserving the corals. Next one, there is something called Coral Reef Breakthrough. This is also an initiative by ICRI only. It is a science-driven method. So it actually provides clear objectives for both the state as well as the non-state actors. So what the government should do, what are the other state actors, what should they do in order to bring a collaboration effort in order to conserve as well as the and protect and rejuvenate the corals. Next one, Global Coral Reef Monitoring Network, and this actually operates on also under the ICRI. Okay, the main what to say job of this or the objective of this is to deliver the reports and the status of global coral reefs. Finally, very important, the Aichi targets 10. You need to know about this more. This actually aims to alleviate the pressure on the corals and also the other ecosystems which are vulnerable to climate change or any kind of ocean acidification. And even in ocean acidification, again you need to know about the eutrophication, and then biological oxygen demand. When it increases, what happens? When the dissolved oxygen increases or decreases, what happens? All this you need to know. So these are the Aichi targets. Okay, now let's move forward and see initiatives by India. So definitely the first one is the WPA. Let us see if there has been any comment. Yeah, not so far. So initiatives is WPA, Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. So don't think WPA only talks about other species like the Asiatic lions, cheetahs, leopards and all. It also includes the hard corals under Schedule 1 of the WPA Act of 1972. Again, EPA, Environmental Protection Act of 1986. This actually gives exclusive jurisdiction, okay, to the central government in order to protect the environment and to prevent the prevent any kind of menace happening to the marine pollution, to the marine ecosystem through pollution. Next one, we have the Coastal Regulation Zone of 1991. This is also under the Environmental Protection Act. So here it provides laws that explicitly outlaws the coral mining in India. You can't mine corals, okay? So this is what is a Coastal Regulation Zone. Next, you have the MPAs. Even yesterday in the High Seas Treaty, we talked about the marine protected areas, right? So MPAs are very important. Those areas where the human activities or any kind of developments should not happen. And even in that case, it has to have, the stringent EIA is mandated in those areas, right? So here, marine protected areas, there are a total of 5 coral reef MPAs, that is marine protected areas in India. Extremely important, okay? So Gulf of Mannar Biosphere Reserve, please do comment where are these located. So Gulf of Mannar, which includes the Gulf of Mannar Marine National Park. Then Gulf of Kutch on the west coast of India, okay? Gujarat. Then Mahatma Gandhi Marine National Park, where it is Andaman and Nicobar. Next one, the Great Nicobar Biosphere Reserve. And finally, the Rani Jhansi Marine National Park, that is in the Ritchie's Archipelago. You need to know where this is located, Greater Andaman. Okay, so these are the initiatives by India, especially the marine protected areas you need to know, and 3 simple regulations, right? WPA, EPA, as well as you have the Coastal Regulation Zone, that is CRZ. Now move forward. What are all the modern techniques that are used in the restoration of coral? First one, there is a process called as coral gardening. Okay, here it is nothing but it is also called as the coral farming. Here, what do? They grow corals by asexual reproduction. Okay, this is to restore the reefs around the world. Next one is what? The biorock or mineral accretion technology. This is nothing but they actually pass a low voltage electric current through seawater, okay, and through this they cause the minerals to precipitate onto the structures, okay, and they create a substrate on which the corals can grow, something like the artificial reefs. The next one is cryopreservation, where the coral sperm and the larvae, they are actually taken out, and the I'm not getting that word. So they are cryogenically frozen, okay, outside, and for future using, for the future use, and this actually preserves the genetic diversity, okay. Next one is coral gene banking, and the other methods actually include the 3D printing of artificial reefs, etc. So that can be printed as well. So this is what it is. Okay. So we are done with the modern techniques. What is the word I'm not able to get? I don't know. 1 minute. Let me just see. Fertilization. I was not able to get that word. I was just getting cryopreservation, but I was not getting fertilization. Fine. So next one. So we are actually done with the coral reefs. Now is the deep sea coral reefs. Okay. So what do you mean by deep sea coral reefs? So scientists have recently mapped a huge stretch of deep sea coral reefs across the Atlantic coast of US. Okay. So let us actually see what it is. So this is the Atlantic coast. This is actually the Gulf of Mexico, and this side will be the Pacific Ocean. So this particular underwater or deep water corals had actually extended from Florida to South Carolina. Okay, somewhere the width of it were also up to 68 miles. So this was actually the finding by the researchers. So the reef extends from Florida to South Carolina. At some points they were actually at a width of 68 miles, and there was 3D mapping technology that was used, and how what were the methods that were actually used to find these out were machine learning algorithms and spatial mapping in order to create 3D representations. So this is not that important, but however we will understand about the deep sea corals. So can you see the picture? These are deep sea corals, not that colorful, but still they actually survive. So these are found in the deeper parts of the ocean, and the depths actually range from around 200 meters to around more than 2000 meters, that is 6561 feet. Okay. So this actually definitely does not require the photic conditions like the shallow water corals. So they inhabit the ocean's dark zones where the sunlight does not even penetrate. Okay, so this is the speciality of this particular coral, that is the deep sea coral. Now let us quickly see the difference between the deep sea corals and the shallow water corals. Okay, so difference in the deep sea coral as well as shallow water. So the deep sea corals, definitely they can actually survive even at different a deep depth, that is 200 to 2000 meters. Here it is only up to 60 meters. Next, if you see the light. So light is actually little to no sunlight reaches them. Here if you see, there is abundant sunlight. What should be the water temperature? We saw around 20 to 32, right? So 20 to 32, and cold temperature 4 to 10. Whereas the, sorry, 20 to 30, it's over here, the warm temperature. Here it is actually deep sea corals, right? So it can actually withstand even up to 4 to 10 degrees, okay? And the warm conditions, it can withstand up to 29 degrees. Next, the nutrient source. Here we saw through photosynthesis that is provided by the zooxanthellae. Here the chemosynthesis from the bacteria which are actually present there, and the dissolved organic matter towards the bottom of the ocean. Next one, the type of the coral. Okay, so these are predominantly soft corals. They are sea anemones and they are black corals as well, whereas the shallow water corals are diverse range of hard as well as soft corals. Next one, the growth rate. They grow very slowly because of nutrient poor conditions, because of absence of sunlight, etc. Whereas here they grow relatively faster. Next one, vulnerability to climate change. Here they are less affected by the changes in the temperature of water because they can withstand extreme temperatures also, and the bleaching events are very rare. But here they are vulnerable, highly vulnerable to the rising water and the bleaching instances. Here biodiversity, if you see, these are not that species rich, very few species actually inhabit them, and they do not have, but they have unique and specialized fauna. Okay, so these are less species rich, but they actually are very rich and biodiverse in fauna. Here they are more species rich, okay, with a significant number of marine life inhabiting them. Next, distribution. Here less coverage in the ocean floor, whereas here large coverage of the ocean floor. And the threats is that both of them face almost similar threats: deep sea mining, climate change and trawling. This is climate change, pollution as well as overfishing. So these are the differences between the deep sea corals as well as the shallow water corals. Now we are actually done with different kinds of ecosystems. Okay, I hope you remember. So let's quickly look at what and all we have finished. We have actually finished the forest ecosystems and associated measures and conventions. Then we actually moved on to the ocean ecosystem. We finished that as well. Then we moved on to the other ecosystems, and in other water all we finished. We actually started with the peatland, and then we moved on to discuss about the mountain partnership, and then today we actually started with the cryosphere, and then we did mangroves, and then we moved on to wetlands and Ramsar convention, and finally we discussed about coral reefs as well, and the necessary conditions, the deep water corals, the artificial reefs, all the possible questions we have actually discussed. Okay, so now let us actually move to the environmental organization and bodies, where the first one is World Wildlife Fund. These are very smaller topics, 4 or 5 of them, and then we will be wrapping up with today's session. So let me just check once more the comment section. And okay, so whatever doubts you have, you guys can leave behind in the comment section, and I will actually come up with the answers, or whatever materials you need or whatever support you need from our end. We will definitely help you guys out. Okay, so now we will move on to the World Wildlife Fund. So let me clear this up. So, recently, World Wildlife Fund has been accused of supporting the polar bear fur trade. Very alarming, isn't it? So, what recently happened is this World Wildlife Fund for Nature, which usually uses this flagship animal as polar bear. See, don't confuse with the symbol of World Wildlife Fund. It has a cute panda, right? But here I'm talking about polar bear. Whenever World Wildlife Fund actually comes up with a campaign with respect to global warming, with respect to melting sea ice, glaciers, etc., they usually use the species of polar bear. But recently what they have told, you guys can actually do sustainable hunting of polar bears. You can use their fur, and their fur can be traded as far as it's sustainable, is what they had also told. So that is why they have been criticized for this one, okay, for the move. Okay, so now let's move forward and talk about what is this World Wildlife Fund for Nature. How cute, isn't it? So there is a beautiful story behind why WWF actually adopted panda. So let me come back to you after. Okay, let me tell that because I can't hold the excitement. So what happened is, as a part of China's diplomacy, so China has a lot of diplomacy, right? So as a part of its panda diplomacy, China actually used to gift these pandas to the diplomats who actually come, the foreign diplomats who visit them, okay, for any kind of trade deals or any kind of deals, okay. So in such a way, they actually sent panda to different countries, and one such beautiful panda was Chi. So this panda was actually a lady panda, okay. So this lady panda actually reaches the zoo in London, and she was so beautiful, so adorable, okay. So what happened? She actually gained international importance, or she actually gained the attention of a lot of people, okay, internationally or globally, I can say. So WWF actually, in the memory of Chi, actually took up the logo or the symbol as this panda. So this panda is actually what? It is Chi. So fine. Now the story stops there. Let us actually start with what is World Wildlife Fund. Okay. So it is an international NGO. Do you know that it is an NGO, non-governmental organization? Very important to know. This is an NGO. Yesterday also we spoke about the foundation on environmental education, right? FEE, which gives the blue flag certification. Very important. Similarly, this is also an NGO focused on the wildlife conservation, of course, sustainable development and the climate change. This was actually founded in 1961, and it is headquartered in Switzerland. This actually has 6 ambitious goals. You won't even believe that these are goals of WWF. We would usually think it is based on the conservation of wildlife and then this species in the polar regions, etc. And nothing like that. Here, it creates a climate resilient and zero carbon world. Did you expect the zero carbon world? No, but it is zero carbon world. Also, it aims at nourishing the people and the nature. So you have to rebuild the food system so that you nourish the people and the nature. These kind of sentences can come as what are the objectives of WWF. Don't think it is nourishing the world and the nature. Food, the people and the nature, it's not associated with WWF. It is because this has been taken from the website itself. Okay. So, conserve the world's most important forests. Yes. Next one, protect the freshwater resources and landscapes. See? Yes. Next one, also achieve healthy oceans and nature positive seascapes. And finally, conserve the wildlife and wild places. So, what you thought would be the first is one of the last objectives of WWF. Talks about the carbon zero world, talks about nourishing the people, giving food to them, talks about protecting the freshwater seascapes. Okay, so all these are very, very important. And WWF is actually not what to say, it's not an organization or a convention. Okay, so it is not a grouping per se. So WWF is actually present in different countries, like over 100 countries. Is it present in India? Yes, present in New Delhi and came up somewhere in 1982. Okay. Now moving forward, what are the reports released by the WWF? Extremely important. Living Planet Report. Yeah, this is a biennial report, comes every once in 2 years. And this actually talks about what is the biodiversity health and what is the impact of human beings on the nature. And all this is actually taken from the Living Planet Index. So first is Living Planet Report. A planet should be healthy and living. So Living Planet Report, WWF. Next one, Riskier Business Report. Again, unexpected. So, highlights climate and environmental risk affecting the business and the economies. Next one, Future of Nature and the Business Report. So, this actually talks about how can the upcoming businesses can align with sustainability and how they can further conserve the biodiversity. Okay, so thereby it actually gives a boost to maintaining the economic growth as well. Next one, Below the Canopy Report. Okay, so it focuses on all the biodiversity in the forest, and this actually shows the importance of trees and the forest ecosystem. We spoke yesterday, no, International Arrangement of Forest, and what is the state of deforestation. We spoke about the EUDR, that is the European Union Deforestation Regulation. Whether it has come into practice or not, tell me in the comment section. Next one is Reviving the Ocean Economy Report. Also there it spoke about sustainable oceans and seascapes, right? So here also Reviving the Ocean Economy Report talks about the economic value of oceans, how much of services or what is the kind of carbon sink the ocean actually can act as, and marine conservation strategies. And finally, the Global Futures Report. This uses the environmental and economic modeling to predict the impact of nature loss on the global economy. So these are the different, what to say, reports that are released. Next one, Global Environment Facility. So Global Environment Facility basically is like a funding agency. Okay, so this has actually approved around $204 million to United Nation Development Climate and Nature Climate. Sorry, I've just lost track of it. Sorry. So it has given or granted this much fund for UNDP in order to carry out the climate as well as nature projects, that is environmental projects. Now moving forward, what is GEF? Established even before 1992 Earth Summit. Okay, so we told that the necessity for the climate change and necessity for protecting the environment, everything actually came up only with the Rio Conventions, right? But even before that, they had come up with the Global Environment Facility. So this basically operates as a family of funds, okay, where they actually give away funds to the the stakeholders who actually want to conserve the biodiversity, who want to combat the biodiversity loss, any kind of climate change degradation that is actually happening to the land and the ocean ecosystems. Okay, and next, it provides financial assistance, I told you, to major international environmental conventions, and this actually works with to 5 major international conventions. What are the conventions? First one, Minamata Convention. Stockholm Convention. Next one, UNCCD, UNCBD, as well as UNFCCC. Yeah, let me just confirm, we should not go wrong over here, whether it is Minamata, just give me a minute, Global Environment, yes, it is Minamata Convention on Mercury, and this is persistent organic pollutants, POPs, and UNCCD desertification, UNCBD biodiversity conservation, and then UNFCCC, what to say, framework convention on climate change. Okay, so these are about the environmental facility, GEF, that is Global Environment Facility, and it works with UNDP, UNEP, World Bank and other agencies also. So this is about the environmental facility. It has 184 members. India part of it? Yes. The governing council actually serves as the primary decision making body. It consists of 32 representatives, people from both the developed, the developing nations. So 14 from the developed nations, 16 from developing nations and 2 which are in the transition phase. Okay. Then headquartered in Washington DC. So remember, US rich country gives out money. So Global Environment Facility. Next is comes to India. Okay, so what is this is IMD. So IMD actually successfully completed 150th anniversary. Okay, so on this they have come up with something called National Framework on Climate Services. Let's see. So this National Framework on Climate Services was on line with the climate services that was brought about by the World Meteorological Organization. Okay, so let us actually see what is this. So in order to mark, so this I think is 2009. Let us see further. So to mark the 150th anniversary, the IMD recently launched something called National Framework for Climate Services. Okay. Moving forward, about the NFCS, this is easy only. This is actually, it aims to enhance the information with respect to that of climate and deliver, what to say, useful information to different sectors. Okay, whether it is disaster risk management, then water resources, then health, energy, agriculture, food security, etc. And this is modeled after the global framework for climate services brought about by WMO, as I told you, in 2009. Okay, let us see about the benefits. Of course, when it gives you all the data, there will be better risk preparedness. Okay, so climate risk preparedness and early warning system. Then there will be increased agricultural productivity because farmers can make an informed decision. Then also there can be efficient water management for agriculture, industry and homes. And then you have resilient energy system which will be aligned with the future climate trends. And finally, the climate informed decisions. This is the same about because that whatever you're coming up with respect to infrastructure, or whether you're talking about disaster management plans, adaptation, mitigation, for all that, if you're provided data, there will be better planning and execution, right? So that is what is this national framework for climate services. The countries like Switzerland, China, Germany and the UK have implemented this since 2009 itself. Okay. Now let's move forward. Now about IMD. So the government agency, it is sorry. So the IMD, it is a government agency. Okay, so this is actually predominantly dealing with weather forecasting, seismology, as well as meteorological changes across the country. Established way back in 1875, important, and operates as India's National Meteorological Service and is headquartered in New Delhi, and of course operates under the Ministry of Earth Sciences. Very important. Okay, don't think Ministry of Environment. It is Ministry of Earth Sciences. This is IMD. Okay. Moving forward, initiative that is brought forward is the Panchayat Weather Service. This basically aims at providing the, the hyper local, all the local weather conditions also will be provided to every Panchayat in the country. It includes what is the humidity, what is the temperature over there, how is the wind, and other severe, warnings also will actually be provided. Next one, it aids the farmers in planning the agricultural activities better. The next one is mobile app Mosam. This is the app, again it brings about weather forecast, warnings as well as other historical data sets are also provided over here. Now moving forward, we have the uh, waves, that is what is weather analysis and forecast enabling system. This is nothing but a web GIS based platform. This provides visualization of the weather forecast also. You would have seen on television, right? It's a visualized weather forecast and climate models, and this also talks about risk warnings and what is the, if there is a possibility of extreme weather events and what will be the socio-economic impact. Next one, the decision support system. It is easy. It is nothing but it is a real time weather and climate data which is actually given to diverse sectors, like in case if you want to do urban planning or you want to set up electricity grid, or with respect to water resources, your healthcare, energy, farming, on all this actually provides information. So these are the initiatives that are launched by the IMD on their 150th anniversary. The next one is National Green Tribunal. Very, very, very important. So recently the Supreme Court has quashed the NGT reward, or the order, I can say, the award that it has given. The NGT has actually asked to stop the development plan for Shimla, but Supreme Court had actually quashed this order, and it has actually allowed this particular development project in the state. Okay, now let us actually move forward and see about the NGT. NGT was established little late only in 2010. Okay, so this is a statutory body under the National Green Tribunal Act of 2010. This acts as a specialized body in order to adjudicate the cases, that is in order to give the final word, or to look after the cases which are environment related. Okay, and this actually replaced the National Environment Appellate Authority, and India is the third country which is actually having a specialized environmental tribunal. Okay, which are the other two countries? You can see this environmental tribunal in Australia as well as New Zealand. Okay, so among these countries, India is the third, and among the developing countries, India is the first. And NGT actually draws its inspiration from Article 21 of the Constitution of India, that is what? Protection to life and liberty. Okay, so this is what, and it aims to provide a healthy environment to the citizens through the adjudicating cases. Next one, the objective is effective resolution of cases, of course, whichever are the environmental cases with respect to environmental protection, the forest conservation, natural resources, etc., and provides relief also and compensation for the damages to both the individuals and the properties, and addresses the diverse environmental disputes. Okay, next one. Moving forward, the composition of the NGT, it actually has a chairperson. Along with him, there will be 10 to 20 experts. Okay, so these expert members are judicial and from other, other areas also. And then the tenure, they actually serve for a 5-year term without reappointment. The appointment of the chairman is actually done by the central government, and he will actually consult, the central government will consult the Chief Justice of India. Okay, because it is involved in adjudication of justice, right? Environmental justice. The member nomination process, there will be a selection committee which again is appointed by the central government, and they nominate the judicial and the expert members. The zonal presence, if you see, the NGT actually operates in 5 areas. These are all very static, nothing to understand. Okay, it operates in 5 areas, and if you see, that is in the north in Delhi, in center it is Bhopal, in east it is Kolkata, that is mainly the metro, and then you have the south, that is Chennai, and west it is in Pune and not in Mumbai. So the principal branch is in Delhi, which is serving the north zone. So what about the powers and the jurisdiction of NGT? Of course, the first one is adjudicatory powers. Okay, and then there are enforcement powers also. So whatever it wants to enforce, that is the orders or the actions against those violating environmental laws, it can do. Next one, regulatory powers. It regulates all the activities whichever is impacting the environment. Okay, next one, review the appeals. NGT itself can review its own, and in case if you are not satisfied, you can go to the Supreme Court of India. Then expertise utilization, it uses expertise from other fields also for advice. Next one, civil and it has both civil and criminal jurisdiction. Why? Because it can impose fines, okay, and penalties also for the environmental offences. So it has both civil and the criminal jurisdiction. Whether the decisions of the NGT is binding on the government or not, yes, it is binding and enforceable both by the government as well as the private sector or any other stakeholder, okay. And this is as per the Code of Civil Procedure, that is 1908. Now it is Bharatiya Nyaya Suraksha Sanhita, BNSS, okay. So all these were replaced, right? IPC, CRPC and all. So this you need to know, and Evidence Act. Last topic for the day is Central Groundwater Board. The Central Groundwater Board recently came up with the 2024 report discussing about what are all the regions in India or which are actually affected by these contaminants, okay, whether it is nitrate contamination or whether it is arsenic contamination, whether it is the uranium or the mercury contamination, all that it has actually told, okay. So this report said that nitrate contamination has been in the groundwater, which has threatened the public health around 440 districts across various states in India. So this is what they have told. So let's quickly see what are all the, first we will see what is this Central Groundwater Board. Of course, it is a statutory body, definitely under the Ministry of Jal Shakti. Very important, Jal, water, and then it helps in monitoring and managing and regulating the groundwater resources in India. And then this conducts different types of scientific studies, okay, and does groundwater mapping and also looks at the quality assessment, okay, to ensure that there is sustainable groundwater use, and also provides technical support for the conservation of the same. The report that it actually comes up with is the annual groundwater quality report. Very, very important. Key observations are what is more important. So the report has actually come out with certain observations, okay. So nitrate contamination has actually been seen in groundwater across 440 districts in India, and 20% of the samples that were collected across these districts were contaminated with nitrate, surpassing the permissible limits of 45 mg per L, which are the WHO and the Bureau of Indian Standards benchmark, okay. So 20% exceeded the safe limit of 45 mg per liter. And the most affected areas are the states of Rajasthan, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, etc. and also Maharashtra, Telangana and all. So these are the states which had more than 40%, and other states had around 35, 27 again, which were on the higher side only, okay. That is more than the prescribed limit. Next one, the lower contamination level surprisingly was noted in Uttar Pradesh, Kerala, Jharkhand and Bihar, and northeastern states were within the safe limits. That is Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Goa, and then Mizoram. Leave away Goa, the other states also, Mizoram, Nagaland, all these reported the nitrate levels which were very, very safe, okay. Now, moving forward, what are the causes of nitrate contamination? This is because of excessive use of nitrogen-based fertilizers for agriculture, which actually results in the high runoff. That is why we have the contamination, okay. And also over irrigation, that actually results in leaching. Also improper livestock waste management, that also results in contamination. And finally, urbanization and poor sewage management, okay. So these are all the causes of nitrate contamination. Now moving forward, we will see what are the effects or the impact that this actually causes. It results in blue baby syndrome, okay, which is also called as the methemoglobinemia in infants, and also health risks for a long time if there is prolonged exposure to nitrate contamination. Now moving forward, the other contaminants were fluoride, which were actually found, which can cause fluorosis. That is, it affects your teeth, that is the dental structure, as well as brings some weakness of the bones, that is your skeletal issues. Next one, arsenic was actually found. So arsenic results in the diseases like cancer and also causes skin lesions. Also, uranium was actually found. Uranium, if it is found in the water or if it actually gets into your body, it actually causes the kidney damage. And finally, high electrical conductivity. What is this? Indicator of salinity and contamination. No, this is not important. Just leave this. And then finally, what is very, very important, the last slide for today, these are the contaminants and these are the diseases that it can cause. Very important, mercury causes Minamata disease. We saw Minamata convention, right, for which the funding has been given. Very important. So, affects the nervous system. Cadmium, it causes itai. Okay, so this is a disease, results in nephrosis, nephritis, that is kidney disorders, nephrons. Next one, chromium, causes lung cancer and reduces photosynthetic activity in plants. If it is copper, it causes diarrhea, it causes vomiting and other discomforts like liver damage as well as stomach cramps, kidney disease, etc. Zinc, again it causes similar vomiting, diarrhea and cramps in the stomach. Nitrate we saw causes blue baby syndrome. And finally, lead. So, presence of lead causes anemia. It also causes mental retardation. It causes the partial paralysis as well as loss of hearing. Okay. So, just give me a minute. Yeah. So, loss of hearing, all these are actually by different contaminants which are present in the groundwater. Okay. So, with this we have actually come to the end of the session. So, we have completed the second session of environment and ecology, very, very important for the upcoming examination. We will have few more sessions, that is 8 more sessions probably, and where we will be completing 100 topics which actually have a very, very high potential of appearing in your examination. So, please do follow the course very, very religiously and diligently. So, we have completed the topics of ecosystem, then environmental organizations, both global and national, which have been in news so far, which were very, very important. Now, on Monday, I will actually meet you with one of the most interesting and important topics, that is climate change. So, we will be discussing about, the adaptation and mitigation strategies and different the conferences that were held. So, COP, we will be discussing on COP 29 as well as COP 16. So, all that let us actually meet on Monday and discuss in detail. So, please do watch the session, and for more interesting sessions, please do like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you.